Auburn falls emphatically to New Mexico State yesterday. I had the iJosh in my hand. It was one of those things. I always tell you guys this happens like 2 or 3 times a year to me. A score pops up that I haven't been watching. I was not glued to this game. I had more pressing matters to attend to up in Oregon. And so you refresh it. Same score. You refresh it again, same score. And you're just refresh. Because what this screen is telling me is 31-10, New Mexico State as a 25.5-point dog, just won outright by 3 touchdowns. That is a 47.5-point differential final score versus point spread. Obviously, that can't have happened, right? It happened. I don't know what else to say. I'm going to, though, because it's irresponsible to do a minute-long segment. This is the first loss Auburn's had to a non-Power 5 since 1991. Jesse, is that at home or is that just period since 1991? Thank you. Jesse says he has no idea. Either way, it's bad, obviously. Either way, it's bad. This was not only the splattering of the week, but you know I have to do this. This was the Sarah McLachlan special. This is a nightmare on a piece of paper in front of me. Hit it, Colin. Auburn was outgained 414-213 at the hands of New Mexico State. They were outrushed 213-65 at the hands of New Mexico State at home. Did I mention this was in Jordan-Hare? New Mexico State had as many rushing yards as Auburn had total yards. This is where it really gets bad. New Mexico State 4 of 4, 28 points in the red zone. Auburn didn't even make it there. In their own building against a team they paid $1.85 million to come in and face. We continue. Auburn had 2 drives of 20-plus yards. That was it, the whole game. Auburn had 2+ drives of 20-plus yards. Auburn's defense allowed 6 passes of 15 or more. Auburn's defense allowed 8 runs of 10 or more. Imagine, if you will, you're walking down the street and you see someone and they ask you for some money. And you figure, it's cold out here. It's the holiday season. It's the season of mercy. It's the season of giving. Here, this is what I have in my pocket. It's yours. And the guy slowly rises, dusts himself off, gathers himself, and you expect a handshake, maybe a hug, and he pulls a baseball bat out, and he hits you in the face. And then he keeps hitting you for 60 minutes, and the cops never show up, and security never intervenes, and that was Auburn football yesterday. They paid $1.85 million to get smoked. And while I'm at it, saw a stat, which admittedly I cannot confirm. I saw Bama paid UT Chattanooga like $700,000. So not only did Auburn budget horribly when they went cupcake shopping, they bought a cupcake that was poisoned because it beat you. And trust me, I had food poisoning a couple of weeks ago, so I know exactly how you guys feel. But let's talk real for a second, because I, as you would expect, saw a lot of animosity being hurled towards first-year head coach Hugh Freeze there. Let's just talk this through for a second. I know the rest of the world just laughed at this. If you're an Auburn fan, you're doing anything but laughing. I had a couple of different buddies, because I grew up in this part of the country, so I've got a lot of buddies who went there and several more who just pulled for Auburn. Had a couple of buddies tell me, this can't happen. If you're an Auburn head coach, this can't happen. And my response was, okay, well, it happened. What do you mean it can't happen? So it did. So what are you going to do? You go and pack his stuff up and he's fired by dawn? Is that really what you're going to do? If the answer is no, well, obviously it can happen, and it did happen. What are you going to do now? Let me tell you what I think. What I think is Hugh Freeze walked in the door at Auburn, looked around and said, we don't have a lot of what I want here. But even having said that, do you have any idea when a head coach takes over a program, do you have any idea what it entails? Talked about this with Brian Kelly last year. You walk in, and normally it's winter when you take the job, and then you're trying to hire a staff, and then you get to spring, but you're still not done. There are so many roles behind the scenes in a college football program, most of which you'll never know, and you don't even know the roles, much less the names that fill those roles. But look, sometimes you take a job, And he comes from Liberty, for example. So you may bring some of your folks with you, and they don't have SEC experience. You may walk in, and there's some holdovers from the previous staff, and all the while, you're inheriting what you inherit roster-wise. Thankfully, you've got the portal today to where you can try and do some stuff pre- and post-spring. That's Band-Aids normally, especially if you have a roster that was as badly in need of repair, for lack of harsher terms, as Auburn's was. But you're drinking water from a fire hose, is my point, in year one. And so, I look at this, and whether they skated by a field goal at the buzzer yesterday or got beat by 3 touchdowns, it doesn't really change what reality is. It just puts a cripplingly embarrassing stain on your history books for now until eternity. But ultimately, Hugh Freeze didn't forget how to run a football program. Hugh Freeze didn't forget how to coach. And you can say all you want to, this can't happen. Well, okay, fire him then, if it can't happen. Speak more realistically. It's humiliating that it happened. It's inexcusable that it happened. And anything you feel, he feels times 5. I think there's a keen awareness in that building. I can confirm for you, there's a keen awareness in that building. There's a lot that still has to change. They have done a fraction of the total overhaul they need to do. You just weren't going to do it overnight. I'm not making excuses. They got smoked by a team they have no business even having a competitive game with. But it doesn't really change my feel on whether he can be successful there. Not in the least. They could have beat him 51-10. It is what it is. It's horrible. It's a terrible look. Am I going to care on early signing day if they blow it out of the water? Am I going to care that they lost to New Mexico State? Am I going to care on the second signing day if they put the finishing touches on a top 10 class? Am I going to care if they, magically portal in a quarterback that changes the outlook and perspective on Auburn football? Am I going to care if his staff looks way better year 2 than year 1? I'm really not. I don't think most of you would. I understand the immediate reverberations of stuff like this. It's not fun. Not fun at all. But is what it is. Don't want to be saying that in November, but is what it is. And what it was ugly. I will meet you that far. It was ugly.